This is Garis masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 491, entitled SNurF Up. Description. This flyer states that this decade will be men's decade, the decade of powerful masculist pressure on women to behave in ways that are favourable to men, in contrast to the past 6 decades in which women, the feminists, have had a monopoly over gender politics and have been pressuring men to behave in ways favourable to women. Men want, that is, masculists want, women to be SNurFs, that is, slim, nurturative, FIPs, and explains why, elaborating on the 3 components of the acronym SNurF. Flyer itself. SNurF Up by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Women have had a monopoly over gender politics for 6 decades, so feel free to lash out at men for the ways that men oppress women and are seen by women to be obnoxious to them. Now, 6 decades after the rise of second-wave feminism in the 60s, men are now intellectually armed with their own gender political ideology in the form of masculism and MGTOW, so feel the time is ripe to reverse the gender political tide, to start lashing back at how women oppress men and at how women are obnoxious to men. This flyer provides a term, a concept, that the masculists and MGTOWs can use to hurl at the kinds of women that masculists and MGTOWs find repulsive. That is, women who are fat or obese, women who are the opposite of being nurturative towards men, and especially towards women who are fluffies, that is, decades-lasting man-slaving parasites of men, living off men's money and labour, and towards fluffy feminists who are seen by the masculists as both hypocrites and genociders, and hence are more hated than even man-slaving fluffies. Masculists want women to be SNurFs, that's SNurFs. That is an acronym for slim, nurturative, FIPs, in brackets, FIP, F-I-P, equals financially independent person. Masculists use the admonition towards women, SNurF up, which means become a SNurF, or you'll be seen in men's eyes, that is masculistic men's eyes, as much less attractive than a woman who has bothered to SNurF up. Why do masculistic men prefer women to be SNurFs and apply powerful moral pressure on women to SNurF up? Question mark. I'll talk about each of the 3 components of the term SNurF in turn. The first is slim. The reality in today's world, in many countries, is that 40% of women are obese and 30% fat, so that to slim quality men, that is slim quality masculists, 2/3 of women are simply unfuckable, sexually repulsive, due to excess amounts of fat hanging over their fronts, so that any man seeing such a woman naked would not even be able to see her cunt. Masculists find such women sexually repulsive, which is why masculists have coined a string of insults to hurl at such women, who obviously make no effort to make themselves sexually attractive to men, so deserve the very negative reaction they receive from men, from slim, quality, masculisted men. There are 3 such labels: fuff, that's F-U-F, yucker, and cockshrinker. A fuff, F-U-F, is an acronym for a fat, unfuckable female, or if the woman is a feminazi, a fat, unfuckable feminazi. A yucker is a woman who is so fat that any man seeing her naked would react with the yuck reaction. A cockshrinker is more self-explanatory, being a woman who is so fat that any man seeing her naked would feel so sexually deflated that his anticipatory erection would shrink away entirely. Masculists are fed to the teeth at watching the visual pollution of unfuckable women all around them, in the supermarkets, walking along the sidewalks, in restaurants, etc. They are a visual pollution who degrade the environment, making masculist observers feel degraded by their environment, as does ugly architecture or uncollected, rotting trash. Masculists take the attitude that if women don't bother to make an effort to remain sexually attractive to men by bothering to keep a tab on the number of calories they stuff into their fat faces each day, then they deserve the level of attention they get from slim quality masculists. That is, none. Masculists piss on fluffs, yuckers and cockshrinkers, labelling them as such, and avoid them like the plague. Such women have very low SMV, that's sexual marketplace value, so are totally incapable of attracting a masculisted man who is health conscious, who makes the effort to watch the number of calories he eats per day so as to remain slim and healthy, not putting on the pounds around his midriff that is so unhealthy to his internal organs, which would lower his life expectancy. When there are millions of masculists, they will express their collective contempt for obesists, for fat, ugly, that's fugly, unfuckables, giving women a very clear message that if they want to attract the sexual attention of slim quality men, and in brackets, and in time most men will become masculists, as the masculist message spreads across the world, as has feminism influencing most women with the basic concepts of women's lib, close brackets, then these women have to put in the effort to remain slim and curvy so that men's visual sexual circuits can switch on, giving him an erection as he sees a gorgeous hunk of fuckable female standing naked in front of him, instead of a land whale who he will dismiss in a tenth of a second, which is the time it takes his brain to detect that the object standing in front of him is a sexually repulsive, unfuckable land whale, a fuff, a yucker, a cockshrinker, and that is precisely what will happen. His cock will shrink down to as small as it would after a cold shower. His libido will evaporate. He will feel disgusted and sneer at her. Quote, "You insult me, you tub of lard. You so obviously can't control the number of calories you stuff into your fat face that you have ballooned out. You will pay a very heavy price for your obesity, you dumb fuck. Not only will your life expectancy be lowered by a decade or more, and your final decade of life will be miserable due to ill health, but you will utterly thwart your hypergamous instinct to mate with a quality man, who will give you quality DNA for your kids. By being obese, you will only be able to mate with the lowest of SMV males, who will not be able to satisfy your female hypergamous instinct. You will thus feel thwarted and frustrated for the rest of your miserable life." End quote. Now, for the second component in the word SNurF, and that is nurturative. Men want relationships with women who are nurturative. That is, they want a repeat with their girlfriend that they had with their mothers, who nurtured them and gave them unconditional love when they were small boys. Women who are nurturers to the man in their lives are much more likely to have a good relationship with him than the typical monoconscious feminazi bitch who is an MFB, in brackets, monoconscious feminazi bigot, who has only had her feminist consciousness raised and knows nothing about masculism, so is unaware how women oppress men with their decades-lasting man-slaving parasitism of men. Their feminism teaches them how men oppress women, for example, rape, sexual harassment, domestic violence, the patriarchy, etc. and nothing about how women oppress men, and worse than vice versa. So not surprisingly, monoconscious feminists are angry at men, since they see gender oppression as a one-way street, that it is men who are the oppressors and women who are the oppressed. So these MFBs are surly and hostile towards men, and definitely not nurturative towards men. In fact, just the opposite. Masculists are mostly bi-conscious, being familiar with both feminist and masculist ideas, so are angry at the monoconscious bigotry of MFBs, and so avoid them, refusing to have relationships with such women, since masculists, and men in general, don't want relationships with women who are misandrist, male-dumping, feminazi bitches. Such women are as repulsive to men, and especially to masculists, as are obese women. Masculists cause both categories of women to rot on the shelf, unfucked, unloved, unpenised, unbabied. Masculists claim that it's in the self-interest of these non-nurturative MFBs to become bi-conscious, since such women are more likely to have boyfriends, since their knowledge of masculist ideas will rise, and hence their female masculist anger at women for the ways that women oppress men will cancel their feminist anger at men for the ways that men oppress women. Once these monoconscious feminists learn some masculist ideas, they will become bi-conscious by definition, and that will make them a lot more approachable by men. So these bi-conscious feminists will then be much more likely to have boyfriends, and so will be a lot happier in their lives than the millions of miserable, manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, monoconscious feminists who currently constitute the most miserable of groups, research shows. That is, professional women in their 40s who are manless, babyless, and feel that life has passed them by, which it has, since they are not exercising their female instincts that are deeply ingrained in their DNA to have babies and to raise them. So when masculists come across these surly, angry, hateful MFBs, they sneer at them, telling them to SNurF up if they want to get a man. If they remain monoconscious, then in time, as most men are influenced by masculist ideas, most men will bite their fucking heads off, haranguing them with masculist verbal venom, labelling them MFBs, feminazi bitches, fuffs, which is often the case with feminists. That is, there is a disproportionate number of fat four feminists, who make one suspicious that the reason they are feminists is because they are using feminism as a form of revenge against men, for men rejecting them sexually, because they are fat fours. Often such women are too dumb to pull themselves out of this vicious circle that they have placed themselves in. The monoconscious bigotry of these MFBs makes masculists scream at them, biting their fucking heads off, haranguing them out of the room, because the molehill feminism that preoccupies the attention of these MFBs seems insignificant compared to the hugely greater gender oppression committed by women, by fluffies on men, that lasts for decades of a man's life, manslaving him for decades. This is the end of part 1.